Okay, right away, I'm looking through the answer choices. We just had a problem with a semicolon, however, comma. Note I've got a comma, though, semicolon, which we said with a however before the semicolon usually doesn't work. And we have a semicolon with a though and no comma afterward, which means that's probably not going to be right. That's not usually a conjunctive adverb we see. Usually just however, moreover, consequently, rather, things like that. So chances are this might be some kind of comma B or D is my hunch, just seeing the structure of answers and what it typically is. Let's just quick check 14. Using satellite remote sensing, Dr. Catherine Whoever, director of NASA's Harvest Africa Initiative, gathers important data on crop health. Nakalombi doesn't just compile the information, though. She also shares her findings with African farmers. And the rest is just a participle clause at the end. That's a dependent clause at the end. So she doesn't just compile the information. That is an independent clause. She also shares her findings with African farmers. That is an independent clause. It might actually be the comma semicolon here. So she doesn't share the information, comma, though. The comma, though, is the subordinating conjunction here, which we could put comma, though, at the end, just like we do though, comma, at the beginning. Though, Nakambi doesn't just compile. Yeah, it's better at the end, of course, there. That may well be it. Could we get away with a comma, or simply a semicolon, though? Though she also shares, once I put the though in front of the next clause, it becomes dependent clause because that's a subordinating conjunction. That can't be right, for sure. Nakambi doesn't just compile the information, though. Independent clause, comma, then independent clause. No, that would be a comma splice. That can't be correct. And that would also be a comma splice. That can't be correct. It is going to be A here for number 14. Okay, scan the answer choices real quick. Quilts in the, quilts the, quilts semicolon the. All right, quilts period. Well, right away, semicolon period are going to be the same. So C and D are probably wrong. Let's check what's going on here. This would suggest two independent clauses, which actually would suggest it's wrong too. So chances are I think it's going to be B. Just look at the answer choices before we even read it. Let's go ahead and look though. From afar, African-American fiber artists, Butler's portraits look like paintings, the deceptions of human faces, bodies, and clothing so intricate that it seems only a fine brush could have rendered them. When viewed up close, however, the portraits reveal themselves to be quilts. The stitching barely visible among the 1,000 pieces of printed micro fabric. Yes, this is a dependent clause at the end of my independent clause with comma, dependent clause. The stitching barely visible. That's modifying what they reveal about the quilt. The correct answer is going to be B. Again, it can't be A because that's not an independent clause after quilt. Not an independent clause, so it's not a semicolon after quilts. Not a period because it's still not an independent clause after the period, after quilts. B is the correct answer. Okay, quick scan of the vertical answers. However, but it, however, comma, it, however, period, it. Well, if it were however, but, we'd probably have a comma here. And however, would usually have a comma beforehand, but we do have a comma beforehand, so that possibly could be it. We might have to read this, actually. In paleontology, the term Elvis taxon gets applied to new identified living species that once presumed to be extinct. Here's our sentence. Like an Elvis impersonator who might bear a striking resemblance to the late musical icon Elvis Presley himself, so dependent clause, comma, an Elvis taxon is not a real thing. However, but it is, again, so that's not right. An Elvis taxon is not a real thing. That is an independent clause. Comma, however, but, well, it'd have to be comma, but if it's an independent clause. It is a misidentified lookalike. That is an independent clause, but that's not right. Can't be the but it without a comma. However, it is a misleading lookalike. That's a comma splice. That can't be it. However, it's not the real thing. However, comma, it is a misidentified lookalike. Again, that would be a run-on sentence. That's not correct. It would be two sentences, two independent clauses separated by a period. That's what has to happen here. An Elvis taxon is not a real thing, comma, however, period. It is a misidentified lookalike. D will be the correct answer for 16.